In 1966, we were going to have the opportunity to see a most amazing display of shooting stars, the Leonid meteor shower, which comes around every 33 years. I went to the Hayden Planetarium with my grandfather, and they showed a demonstration of what we were going to see in the sky on a particular night in November. And I was just so excited about this. I was wired for this event. And the night of the shower, I watched the Three Wise Men on television. Tex Antoine, of course, Dr. Frank Field, and also a gentleman on Channel 2 at the time, Harry Geiss. And they all said the same thing, that we're going to have no worse than partly cloudy skies for the meteor shower. Get on out there and observe it. So I went to bed early, woke up at the stroke of midnight, ran outside, and the sky was totally and completely cloudy.
Oh,
Absolutely, you couldn't see a darn thing. And I was upset that I was missing the meteor shower, but more upset that the people on TV actually told me a lie. They led me down the wrong path. They promised me I was going to see this, and it was cloudy. So the very next day, I said, "This is not going to happen to me again." And so I, like Pat did, I went to the library, took out all these books about weather forecasting and meteorology and whatever from my library. One of the things that I did, one of the books said you can find weather maps in your local newspaper, and I started going down to the New York, buy the New York Times at Angie's Candy Store near my house in Throgs Neck. And at the time, the Times only cost a dime. And so what I would do is I'd buy the New York Times, I'd bring it home, I'd throw most of the paper away, I'd cut out the weather page, and it had the official National Weather Service maps with isobars and weather station symbols on it. That was back in the day when you had the real thing available to you on a daily basis. And for the next 3 years, I did that. I cut out the newspaper, the weather map, put it in not a shoebox, but a boot box, because this was a large format. And I must have had like maybe 1,000 weather maps over a 3-year period. And what I was doing was I was learning how to forecast, and it was simple extrapolation. The low or the high is over here in Chicago one day, it should be over the Northeast the next day, that kind of thing. But I was making up my own weather forecasts, and I also began putting the weather forecast up on the board, the blackboard, in homeroom in junior high school and then later high school. In fact, it got to be so popular that even some of the teachers would go in to just see what the weather was going to be like for the upcoming weekend based upon what I put on the board. But the thing that stood out at my school, Junior High School 101, was an event. It was on Friday, February 7th, 1969, and I used those big pastel crayons, the big blue and pink ones, the fat ones, and I wrote on the board, "Snow Day Monday." And I wrote the reason. There was a big storm, and I thought there was going to be a lot of snow, and there might not be any school. And one of my teachers, a very tall, imposing guy, Mr. Russo, came up to me afterwards, and he said, "I saw Frank Field last night. He says it's going to rain this weekend. You're telling me it's going to snow. Who should I believe?" And I said, "Well, this is what I think. I believe we're going to have a snowstorm on Sunday. We're not going to have any school on Monday." So as it turned out, the storm that I had suggested would have a lot of snow, and I was thinking more with my heart than with my head, I think. But still, on that Sunday, it started to snow. The people on radio were saying, "Don't worry about it. The snow's going to change to rain. It's going to be rain. It's going to be rain." Never changed over to rain. Turned out that was the famous Lindsay snowstorm. And 15 or 20 inches of snow fell. And it turned out that we didn't have school from not just Monday, but for most of that upcoming week. When I came back later to school, when the schools were finally open, I was like the conquering hero. And in fact, Mr. Russo came up to me and said, "You ought to be on TV and do the weather." And I said, "Well, if I go to school, I learn about that." He said, "I'm not talking about when you go to school at a college. I'm talking about right now. You did better than all the other guys, all the bozos on TV." But anyway, that's how the whole thing started. And that's how I ended up eventually working my way toward trying to be, I wanted to be an astronomer, but I ended up, and my degree is not in atmospheric science. My degree is in earth and planetary science. I could be an earth science teacher, but I'm able now to walk the fence, so to speak. I can do meteorology, and I also can do astronomy. And in fact, I'm still have an affiliation with the Hayden Planetarium. Neil Tyson is my boss, and so I get the best of both worlds. But it all started back in the mid '60s when I got clouded out of that meteor shower, got very PO'd, and eventually said, "I'm going to learn how to do this, so I don't have to rely on those nimnuts on television or radio. I'm going to do it myself," and that's how I ended up being what I am today.